is that Israel, like other countries in the region, is a sovereign country that makes its own decisions. The United States does not dictate to Israel what it must do, just as we don't dictate to any country what it must do. We present what we believe are the. We present what we believe are the. Good one, Matt. We present. No, I mean, but come on, yeah. We present stand-up hour in the briefing room.
It's no longer a war. It's a one-sided military genocide of a defenseless people. Now, you must say, you probably will, I'm an anti-Semite. Somebody who is prejudiced against the Jewish people or to Zionists itself. Now, you could take one look at my channel and see that I criticize everybody who engages in criminal and war crimes activity. So this slur will not work on someone like me. And so, with 35,000 people dead, Palestinians, 2.3 million displaced, and wherever Israel tells them to go, they immediately bomb the area. Today, they bombed a school, killing many children, loved ones who were playing soccer, going on their daily lives, while the United States keeps giving them weapons of war to be used on defenseless civilians. They might say that there was a Hamas fighter somewhere scoring a goal. Maybe a single Hamas fighter was hiding in the bathroom of the school and will justify their actions. You'll have people here in the United States that will defend these actions. And so, what do we say? What do we do to circumvent the problem here? Well, the United States needs to immediately act. I'm not talking about the government here. I'm talking about the people. I'm asking you not to support the government at all. Now, for many of you, that's a bold claim, a bold action. But after reading you the latest statistics and what the international criminal courts abide by, and over 19 countries in agreement with the international criminal courts about arrest warrants handed down the other few days ago by the international criminal courts. So let's talk about this for a minute. The International Criminal Court's prosecutor requests arrest warrants for Israeli leaders. May 20th, International Criminal Court prosecutor Karim Khan announced that he requests warrants for the arrest of Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, Defense Minister Yoav Gallant, which, if issued by the court's pretrial chamber, would make the leaders subject to arrest if they travel to any of the over 120 ICC member states. Now remember this. There are over 120 countries who abide by the Rome Statutes, which are the core laws that make up the international criminal courts. I did a video about this a while back, but I'll revisit again in short order. By requesting such warrants, Khan has set a precedent that possesses a risk to U.S. officials and service members by exposing them to potential ICC prosecution whenever U.S. forces conduct operations on the territory of an ICC member state. This is tremendous in its right. It's going to have long-term ramifications. And I'll explain all this later on. And this would mean that U.S. President Joe Biden, Secretary of State Antony Blinken, Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin would be held liable for the 4 laws, which are the Rome Statutes, under the International Criminal Courts. The risk of this, the assertion of the international criminal prosecution of U.S. armed forces and leaders may impact future decisions to employ U.S. armed forces for important missions. But if the U.S. military abides by their code of conduct. That means holding U.S. officials accountable for crimes against the state would be ratified, justified. So just remember that. In keeping with long-standing U.S. law and policy to protect the citizens of major non-NATO ally states, including Israel, the United States is also not a co-signer of the Rome Statutes. They're one of Israel, the United States, North Korea, and a couple of other countries, like 4 or maybe 5. It's very little. The United States must unequivocally convey to ICC prosecutors that issuing arrest warrants for Israeli officials is inconsistent with the spirit of the Rome Statutes and the interest of international peace and security. It was also later said that if the ICC does arrest Netanyahu and Gallant and brought to the Rome Statutes to the International Criminal Courts, the United States would militarily intervene. And that would mean World War III, because the states who are ratified under the International Criminal Courts would be justified in defending the International Criminal Courts. France, Germany, Canada, Mexico, Spain, Japan. Imagine. It should include in considering U.S. sanctions in response to the prosecutorial effort. It must also unambiguously state that any country that complies with an ICC arrest warrant for Israeli officials may face adverse consequences imposed by the United States. As you can see, this is a threat right here. Direct threat. Right? Now, let me run down the 4 laws, the 4 laws regarding what is the definition of these war crimes, because this is really important. Now, the news media are not going to tell you this because they're controlled by corporations, various across the board. It's not as many as they used to be, which is even more dangerous because now they can control a narrative. This is the reason why I tell everyone who watches me to not watch TV. You want to watch sports or, cooking shows or whatever, that's fine. The news should be shut off. Fox, CNN, ABC, NBC, MSNBC, because they're brainwashing. Politically, apolitically, religiously, racially, sexually. And you don't know what to believe. You're jumping from one ship to the next, making you feel this way and that way. This is the reason why the CIA controls journalists back in the 1960s, 70s. Until the church committee hearings put a CIA under the shadows. But after 9/11, came right back up. So, don't watch TV, please. So let's talk about the Rome Statutes. As you can see, the Rome Statutes of the International Criminal Court. I'm not going to read anything when it comes to really important data without using primary source material. This is a benefit for both me and you in regards to having an argument, a debate, or just telling people about a certain situation happening anywhere in the world. And I try to be very punctual, very literate, and factual, because that's what matters. Because information is power, and the power belongs in the hands of the people. Do you not agree? I mean, everybody that watches my channel seems to disagree with what's going on in the world by the U.S. government and foreign governments as well as the media. Let's get right to it. So let's read Article 5. Jurisdiction, admissibility, and applicable law, right? The jurisdiction of the court shall be limited to the most serious crimes of concern to the international community as a whole. The court has jurisdiction in accordance with the statutes with respect to the following crimes. As you can see, the crime of genocide, crimes against humanity, war crimes, the crimes of aggression. The court shall exercise jurisdiction over the crime of aggression once a provision is adopted in accordance with Article 121 and 123, defining the crime and setting out the condition under which the court shall exercise jurisdiction with respect to this crime. Such a provision shall be consistent with the relevant provisions of the Charter of the United Nations. Now, I'm going to read this here. It's really important. And I don't want to bore you. I'll also link this in the bottom of the description for you. Article 6, genocide. For the purpose of this statute, genocide means any of the following acts committed with intent to destroy, in whole or in part, a national, ethnical, racial, or religious group as such. And this is basically referring to the government of Israel, the military of Israel, and the government of the United States, who are supplying weapons directly to Israel to be used against civilians, and the United States government knows this. End of story. I'm not speculating. That's a fact. For the purpose of this statute, genocide means any of the following acts committed with intent to destroy in whole and part a national, ethnic, racial, or religious group as such. Okay? All right. Killing members of the group. Causing serious bodily or intent or mental harm to members of the group. Deliberately inflicting on the group condition of life calculated to bring out its physical destruction in whole or in part. Posing measures intended to prevent births within the group. Forcibly transferring children of the group to another group. Do I really need to elaborate more on this, or do you need to see 100, 200 more videos, amateur and news videos, showing exactly that in Gaza, in Rafah, in Khan Yunis? This is not a debate anymore. This is open-ended genocide. Even the Israeli military are filming it for us because they are confident that with the United States on their side and the coalition, which are going to basically argue against, because they're part of the Rome Statutes, they're co-signers of the ICC, and some of them are agreeing, and I'm going to get to that in a minute, with the arrest warrants issued for Netanyahu and Gallant. Only the United States stands in the way. And we it doesn't matter if it's Biden or Trump. It just doesn't, because they're not the leaders. They're the bullhorns. The people who are directing them are the intelligence services, foreign and domestic, corporations, military, oil, banking, wealthy donors, foreign and domestic. And so, with that, that's a lot of power. We're not going to get any help in these areas. So the people need to come together. But right now, the United States population is fractured by ideology. They don't know what it means to be a human being anymore. They consider themselves a color. They consider themselves of a certain faith. They consider themselves of a certain sex. They consider themselves of a certain political party, when they realize all of this doesn't matter. The only thing that matters is you're a human being. You feel, you hurt, you love. Article 2, crimes against humanity. For the purpose of this statute, crimes against humanity means any of the following acts were committed as part of a widespread or systematic attack directed against any civilian population with knowledge of the attack. And they are murder, extermination, enslavement, deportation or forced transfer of population, imprisonment or other severe deprivation of physical liberty in violation of fundamental rules of international law: torture, rape, sexual slavery, enforced prostitution, forced pregnancy, enforced sterilization, or any other form of sexual violence of comparable gravity. Persecution against any identifiable group or collectivity on political, racial, national, ethnic, cultural, religious, gender, as defined in paragraph 3. Enforced disappearance of persons, the crime of apartheid. Other inhumane acts of similar character, intentionally causing great suffering or serious injury to body or mental or physical health. And you can read all this later. Again, I say to you, this is not a debate. The Israeli military are filming their own crimes. Even if you don't believe any of the video coming out of Palestinian hands. And it's extended beyond Gaza. It's now in Lebanon. And they'll use the excuse that Hezbollah and Hamas and Iran, as well as Syria and Lebanon, are all in on the plot. I am not here to say that Hamas and Hezbollah does not exist. I am not here to say that they aren't terrorist organizations. If Israel and the United States were really concerned about peace, there would not be a Nakba. There would not be a Gaza invasion. There would not be a slaughter of Khan units. There would not be a Gaza invasion part 2. There would not have been an October 7th. With the continued degradation, enslavement, land stealing, and open murder on Palestinians, groups are going to form. Incidentally, it was through the Israeli military who helped give funding and military assistance to Hamas when they were called Al-Jama al-Islamiyah, headed by Sheikh Yassin, knowing full well that Sheikh Yassin was a part of the Egyptian Muslim Brotherhood. What does anyone think when you completely destroy a person's life and leave the one man standing? This is the reason why they kill women and children, in the hopes of having the men become terrorists or join a terrorist group when you destroy his livelihood and his family. It's predictable. This way, groups like Al-Qaeda, Islamic State, Taliban, Hamas, Hezbollah, Abu Sayyaf, Jama Islamiyah, Jamaat al-Islami, all these groups will always exist because of the disastrous U.S. foreign policy of the United States and Israel and Saudi Arabia. Article 8, war crimes. The court shall have jurisdiction in respect of war crimes, in particular when committed as part of a plan or policy or as part of a large-scale commission of said crimes. Willful killing, torture, or inhumane treatment, including biological experiments, willfully causing great suffering or serious injury to bodily or health. Extensive destruction, appropriation of property, not justified by military necessity, carried out unlawfully and wanton. Compelling a prisoner of war or other protected persons to serve in the forces of a hostile power. And for those who claim that it's Hamas who uses civilian as shields, the Israeli military have done just that as well. Just to let you know. And they film it too. Willfully depriving a prisoner of war or other protected people of the rights of fair and regular trial. How many Palestinians are in prisons? Doctors, lawyers, mixed in with the Hamas and Hezbollah terrorists, justifying it as they're probably Hamas or just guilty of being Arab, because some people within the IDF are hardcore racists. And if they're settlers, God forbid, they'll just kill them. Because settlers are no different and I will say this directly in the camera, Israeli settlers are no different than ISIS. They believe in a caliphate of their own. They don't want a worldwide caliphate. They want from this Jordan to the river to the sea, all their own. They want to push the borders further west and further east. And they've said so in their chart. Unlawful deportation or transfer of unlawful confinement and taking of hostages. There's a lot there. Article 9, elements of crimes. Now, I'm not going to get into that, right? Right? Because it's a long, like I said, I'll link it in the description. Now, importantly enough, what are the countries that are going to be behind the Rome Statutes and support the International Criminal Courts? France, Germany, and others back ICC after arrest warrant request. This is May 21st. Washington Post. European countries, including France and Germany, coalition partners, issued statements affirming their support for the legitimacy of the International Criminal Court after its prosecutors sought arrest warrants from top Israeli and Hamas officials. It wasn't just Netanyahu and Galan. I'm going to get into that in a minute because I do criticize both sides. The UN Relief and Works Agency that aids Palestinian refugees said it suspended food distribution in Rafah for the first time during the war due to safety concerns and a lack of supplies. We have no supplies, so we have nothing to distribute. And that was May 21st. It is now up to 19 countries, openly calling for the arrest of Netanyahu, Gallant, and the 3 Hamas leaders. Okay? So I'm going to read that as well. So let's get into that right now. What happens if the ICC issues the warrants? If they are issued, it would make it difficult for Israel and Hamas leaders to travel to countries under the ICC's jurisdiction. Do you think Netanyahu's going anywhere? He's going only to 2 countries. That's it. Israel, the United States. That's all he needs. The U.S. delegation can go and act as Netanyahu's slave or spokesman in the other countries that are under ICC jurisdiction. But I have a way to circumvent that. And I'm going to tell you in a minute. Some 124 countries have signed the Rome Statute. Now imagine 124 countries speaking out against Israel. Oh, I'm atheist, but I'm praying. Would that be something? A pipe dream, but one can have hope. Some 124 countries have signed the Rome Statute, a treaty that requires them to turn in individuals with active ICC arrest warrants who set foot on their territory. Places under the ICC's jurisdiction, including most of the Western Hemisphere, with the notable exception of the United States and Europe and Oceania, plus parts of Africa and Asia. Like I said, there was about 7 countries that are not under ICC jurisdiction. The move will be especially significant for Israeli leaders who frequently shuttle to Western capitals that fall under the ICC jurisdiction. The last world leader to have arrest warrant issued for his arrest was Vladimir Putin, and justifiably so, because he's a mass murderer. And that doesn't mean that I support Ukraine, because Zelensky is also a mass murderer, as well as the United States and NATO that are supporting this war, giving weapons to a country in which they help stage a coup. Under the revolution of dignity. What would ICC arrest warrants mean for Hamas leaders? An arrest warrant would have little effect on the ability of Hamas leaders to travel. Sinwar and Deev are believed to be hiding in Gaza. Thousands of Israeli soldiers are actively looking for the 2 men in the wake of October 7th that killed 1,200 people in Israel. Now we have reports called the Hannibal Directive, which basically called for Israeli soldiers, any part of the Israeli military, to kill both Hamas and the Israeli soldiers if they are captured. I'm not making this up, folks. It's under the Hannibal Directive, an Israeli guideline for the idea. Like I said, this is not a debate anymore. It's a matter of fact. But the Gulf Corporation countries, including Qatar, are not signatories to the Rome Statute, and that's where Hamas is, the top leadership. Now, here is my advice for the ICC or for any other country under the jurisdiction of the ICC. They should issue more arrest warrants, but this time for the following: U.S. President Joe Biden, Secretary of State Antony Blinken, U.S. Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin. Why? Because they are in violation of a number of issues. They are also guilty of violating Rome Statute Article 8, which are under the label war crimes. And you could read all that in the Rome Statutes, which I'll post underneath the description, right? What we need to do as a people here, ladies and gentlemen, is basically just take out the proverbial IV from your arm that's being fed to you through the news, through people who are basically one-sided, whether it's for the Hamas or Israeli side, whether it's left or right or centrist. And use your own cognitive dissonance. Use your morality, what's left of it. You as a human being. Is this the proper way of deleting an enemy by killing more innocent people as well as the enemy? I think right now it is up to 160 to 1 in regards to how many civilians are prepared to kill to how many of Hamas. I believe the number is like 300 something to 1. But let's leave it at 160 to 1. This is like saying, let me use a hypothetical here. 3 people, 3 bank robbers, take a hostage. They come out, meet the police outside, and say, we'll kill this person if we can't leave. And the police responds by shooting all 4 of the people. Yeah, there's 3 bank robbers, 1 civilian. Do you really think that that's going to go over well here in the United States? With all the police abuse of civilians, including murder, in which you have a large percentage of people who are basically criticizing the police departments. If that's the case, why aren't these same people using that same argument for the Palestinians in Gaza, West Bank, Khan Yunis, Rafah, Gaza City? Ask yourself, is that a reasonable take? Now, what is really happening is this. There are 200 civilians, and Hamas is hiding within them. The Israeli military are killing all of them. The government is doing this. The people of the left and the right are doing this. The people clapping are speaking to you. You have to ask yourself why. I don't want to hear about God's chosen people. The God that you believe in, this real estate developer that issues land to a select group of people, doesn't even exist. It's not even biblical. Did Christ ever mention about killing people in protection of others? Show me the scripture. I'm an atheist, but I'm not an anti-theist. I don't call for the dissolution of religion. I call for the protection of religion in the United States, because the preambles that were created by the founding fathers, as they weren't perfect, but they were excellent. It's what makes the United States so unique between the Bill of Rights and the Constitution. Like I said, not perfect. It can't be. But it's the best preambles we have in the world. Now, what we need to do is basically use nonviolence. We need to protest as one in the streets on a specific day, not go to work, not go to school, but protest as a human race, not as a Democrat, not as a Republican, not as a Christian or a Muslim or a Jew, not as black, white, or brown or yellow, not as man or woman or trans or gay, because all of this doesn't matter. These are learned applications. You're a human being. Love is the only thing that matters. And the twisted hate and fear and confusion that resides in all of us are just basically you questioning yourself because others are telling you how to feel, how to act. If I pinch your arm hard enough, you're going to say, ouch. Don't do that. You have to ask yourself why you stay silent in the suffering of Gaza. But you don't need to be silent anymore. The only thing that matters is the existence of the human race, and we are so close to being in the threat of extinction by madmen, rich bankers, rich lobbyists, and foreign nations that don't care about this country, but only want your money, want your enslavement, want you unhealthy, want you uneducated because you're easier to control. Stop watching TV, read more, whether it's through Kindle or books. Reading keeps the brain active. And always search for the truth, which is information. Information that is scrutinized under the scientific method. Stop catering to belief and speculation because they leave you in a state of confusion. This is the way we could beat those who have divided us and destroyed us up until this point. All right, guys, thank you very much for watching the video. See you in the next one. Take care, everybody.